Welcome to Best Kept Secrets Travel Podcast, Episode 3. My name is Morgan.
And I'm Will, and on this episode we're doing a deep dive down under.
In Australia.
I'd hope they would have got that.
So would I, but they might not. Anyway, trailer.
Best friends, and that's for life. Who stay traveling? I'm talking worldwide. 65 countries between the two. Every moment is so unbelievable. Sharing the best kept secrets about the trips and mistakes they made that they can't forget. So tell me if you're ready for a time to remember as they gear up for the next adventure. Yeah. Woo! Best kept secrets travel.
The best way you can support us is by following us on social. So that's Best Kept Secrets Travel on YouTube, podcasts and TikTok, and the BKStravel on Instagram. So that's TheBKSTravel.
If you guys are wondering what a deep dive is, this is our first ever episode on the podcast doing a deep dive into a country. So a deep dive to us is trying to cover as many areas as possible. We'll go everything from geography, history of the country,
food, language, money,
exciting activities to do, and our favourite things that we've done in those countries if we've been. And Australia is definitely one of them. We travelled around Australia together for a good 3.5 weeks down the east coast, and I also lived there in Sydney for 6 months when I was a good age of about 1. So I experienced everything.
Now, if this is the first time you're watching any of our videos, I recommend you go back to episode 1 because this is episode 3 and we release these all at the same time. If you go back to that right now, watch episode 1, then watch episode 2, and then come back to this.
And make sure you've clicked that like and subscribe button. Location, location, location. Australia is the world's smallest continent. I know, it's breathtaking. And one of the largest countries on Earth, lying between the Pacific and Indian Oceans in the southern hemisphere.
Australia's capital is Canberra, and did you know that Canberra was selected as the capital because there was essentially an argument between Sydney and Melbourne, and they couldn't decide which one was which, so they literally just went for one in the middle.
I did know that because you told me earlier. Australia was first ever inhabited over 40,000 years ago by the Aboriginal people. It was then mapped out later on by the Dutch, Spanish and English.
In 1770, Captain James Cook explored the east coast and he named it New South Wales. Nowadays, Australia has a population of 25.36 million.
Because we know our viewers and listeners could be from all over the world, we need you guys to do your own research in terms of visas and vaccinations because every country is so specific and Australia does have very strict borders. The best time to visit Australia is months of September and October because it's slightly bit cooler, so you can still visit the beaches and you can still visit Uluru. It's perfect time of the year and the humidity and rains have still not come up to Cairns. Morgan, what's the money situation in Australia?
So £1 is the equivalent of 1.8 Aussie dollars, and ATMs are very freely accessible, much easier than a lot of other countries as it's a Western country. Australia has type 1 plugs, which are not to do with money, but that's also involved in this point, and which have 3 flat pins.
Morgan's decided he's going to test me on a little bit of slang, and I've decided we better dress up for it. So, let's go. Well, that was quick. You ready?
That wasn't too bad. So I'm going to test you on various different Aussie slang and I want you to guess what it means. Some of them will be easier, some of them will be harder. So we'll start with a nice one. Barbie.
Barbecue.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to know that.
Yeah.
Shrimp on the Barbie.
Shrimp on the Barbie. Next one, fair dinkum.
Is that fair dues?
Yeah, true, real, genuine, so yeah, fair.
Okay.
We'll give that. What about ripper?
Oh God, I'm going to slaughter. That was an absolute ripper. Oh, I know I should know it. Was that like a loud one or fast one? Oh, I'm definitely wrong on this.
It means really great.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that wasn't good. Okay, next one, she'll be right.
She'll be right.
Yep.
What's that like? The wife's correct?
Well, close. Everything will be alright.
Oh.
Yeah. What about sweet as?
It's like, it's something sweet as. It's like, almost like saying like it's cool, like, that's good, that's chill.
Yeah, awesome. So Aussies will often put as at the end of adjectives to give it emphasis. Other examples include lazy as, lovely as, fast as, or common as. Another one is goon, which we will be talking about in a bit.
I've dabbled in the goon. Goon is a box of wine and one of the cheapest alcohols in Australia.
Yeah, the best invention ever produced by mankind. Goon is cheap box wine that will inevitably become an integral part of your Australian backpacking experience.
Is this your own quote?
That is now my own quote that I stole from online. The next one is thongs.
Oh, that's...
Were you saying that in an Aussie accent?
I was going to. The thong is not what you guys viewing or listening.
Well, unless they're Australian.
Unless you're an Oz. Unless you're an Aussie. So a thong is a flip-flop. So if someone says, oh, I'm going to wear my thongs down to the beach, please don't just suddenly leave your hotel room or hostel with your cheeks out. It's not going to go well.
They might be doing both.
It's up to you.
It's possible. What about a stubby?
Well, stubby's a small beer, isn't it?
Yep, it is.
Yeah, stubby's in the UK.
Okay, we've got a harder one. A shark biscuit.
I feel like I should know it. A shark biscuit. It's a boogie board or something. It's like a bodyboard or a surfboard.
You're in the right location.
Is it not?
No, it's kids at the beach. And the last one that I have here is a Manchester.
Is that just city?
That is a city, yeah. But that's not what slang is.
I don't know.
Any other guesses?
Not a clue.
Not a clue. So they're sheet/linen.
Is a Manchester.
Yeah. This is because Manchester was once the main provider of bedding for Australia's early settlers.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, that's what we want from these episodes, for you to learn all the best kept secrets.
As always, when you're travelling, gear and packing is essential. Knowing what you're going to bring should be one of the top priority list.
So it's obviously the sunnies.
Got to have sunnies, sun cream, board shorts,
Imodium.
and very importantly, actually make sure you do bring a pair of hiking shoes. Good pair of shoes, because a lot of excursions you actually want to. For anyone out there, Australia has the highest percentage of deadly animals in the world per metre squared. Most venomous animals in the world per metre squared. So if you don't like creepy crawlies, if you don't want spiders walking over your thongs or flip-flops, then
Stay in the air.
wear good boots when you're out on trips. And just a side note, if you are flying to Oz from whatever country you're coming from, make sure you've cleaned your boots, and when you're coming off the plane and you're about to go through immigration or custom, tie your boots together and stick them around your neck, because what that means is you're less likely to then be pushed through the way longer queue where they search all your bags and everything, but you can prove that they've been cleaned, because one of their biggest worries is bringing any contaminants into the country, and boots are one of the most common places for them to come.
An easier way than having a heavy necklace is just to wear the shoes.
There's that as well, but then it shows that you've been wearing them.
Oh, that's a shame. What are your favourite, from our experience in Australia, what were your favourite local foods and drinks that we tried?
Other than Goon, which I only enjoyed because of how cheap it was relative to all other alcohols, one of my favourite things we bought was actually kangaroo. For a lot of people out there thinking about Australia and thinking how lovely these kangaroos are to see, there are more camels in Australia than there are kangaroos, so don't stress too much. But also, kangaroos are seriously overpopulated and are damaging all the wildlife. No matter what you are, if you're vegan, veggie, whatever, or meat eaters like us, kangaroos will be having an impact on the produce getting to you. Kangaroos, very, very good lean meat and super overpopulated, which means that, you know, we're not having to farm animals to produce it. They're being produced out in the wild. Super lovely meat when we tried it.
Yeah, we had mincemeat and we cooked it out the back of our camper van, didn't we?
Exactly, and in a lot of the Aussie supermarkets we visited, this is why we loved it, was that the kangaroo mince came in resealable packets, so we could portion that out when we were in camper vans or in hostels, which made it so much easier. What did you like?
Penguins, but I was told about this awful thing called Tim Tams.
Great debate.
It's not a great debate, it's an easy answer.
Right, we're going to break this down. We've got them in front of us. Let's just hit them up. Morgan opened the penguins. I'm opening the Tim Tams. So, Morgan's opened the penguins up. I'm just getting the Tim Tams. On first sight, the thing I do like about the penguins, relative to the Tim Tams,
is the extra plastic.
It's in the extra plastic, but the ability to actually take this penguin, if I was to put that in my pocket, and this Tim Tam in my pocket, that's going to ruin my jeans.
But anyway, there are also worse jokes in the Tim Tams because...
There are none.
Exactly. Why can't penguins play football?
I don't know. Why can't penguins play football?
Because they're snowball.
Oh, God. What do penguins wear to the beach?
Not sure.
Flipper flops.
That
doesn't sell a penguin to you over a Tim Tam. I don't know what is. Okay, now we're going to do a fair test. On packaging, penguins 1-0.
100%.
Penguins 1-0 on packaging.
2-0.
Oh, yeah. They get double points because I prefer the packaging plus the joke. Compare.
So the UK is bigger.
Shock.
In everything but size of country.
The penguin has properly tempered chocolate because it's still glossy.
Yeah, the Tim Tam sort of cheaper and flimsier looking.
Very identical thickness. So
it's the same biscuit, they've just made it shorter.
Does it say the weight of these? 24 grams per penguin.
So if you can't see and you're on the podcast, penguin is essentially a biscuit. It's like a biscuit sandwich with chocolate and then wrapped fully in chocolate on top of that.
You get 6 grams more in the penguin.
6 grams. So that extra bit, 6
it's
grams.
an extra third of the Tim Tam onto a penguin. So penguins are winning by size. 3-0.
Wrapping, everything.
Size wrapping Joe with 3-0 to the penguin. Actually, no, chocolate coating 4-0.
Oh yeah, chocolate coating's
We're
better.
going to really irritate someone out there, but this is us just giving a brutal opinion.
Okay, we'll have the. Should we have the Tim Tam
I think
first?
we break them in half. We look at the layers. What's the snap? Oh, okay. The Tim Tam did have a nice snap.
Tim Tam snap better than the penguin.
Tim Tam, you get a point. It's 4-1.
I'm coming round.
They are pretty much
So
identical.
that is the penguin, and that is the Tim Tam.
The actual biscuit of the Tim Tam looks a lot nicer. Let's taste it. Penguin.
Penguin. That's a very nice chocolatey taste. It's nice and crunchy. Everything
I think if
want.
I'm looking at the layering and the colour of the layers, I think the Tim Tam wins. I haven't tried the taste yet.
Although the Tim Tam cracked better, the actual bite wasn't as nice for me. And also I found that the Tim Tam, the sort of inside the sandwich chocolate, was a lot softer than it was for the penguin.
The biscuit of the Tim Tam is slightly bit thicker. Tiny bit. I don't know, I think my instant reaction, and this is very rogue, this is going against the British norm. I think the off instinct, the flavour of the Tim Tam was nicer.
No, for me, the middle of the Tim Tam doesn't taste as nice as the penguin.
What are we doing?
We've probably spent 5 minutes reviewing penguin v Tim Tam.
You know what?
Overall, penguin wins.
by the scoreboard, 4-3. Penguin definitely wins on packaging. Personally, I think, other than the outside chocolate, I don't know, to be honest. The problem with
I didn't like the middle Tim Tams taste.
I've now got them in. These are just going to slowly disappear throughout the video, and you're going to notice that.
The next big battle between England and Australia.
In the blue corner, we have
Marmite from the UK, weighing in at 600 grams.
that's just a sharing. This is the fact that I'm greedy.
In the red corner, we have Vegemite from Australia, weighing in at 220 grams.
I can't believe I'm doing this. I already know which one I've got.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So, oh Christ!
Let's look at the branding. If anyone tries to tell me that Vegemite's logo is nicer than Marmite's,
they're wrong if they do. So
it's slightly medicinal.
So what is the Vegemite one is a yellow branding with a sort of red triangle, whereas the Marmite one is again yellow, but it has a lot more red and a little Marmite pot. Let's talk about yeast extract.
Yeah, so this is yeast extract. We knew that, but they both are.
Well, that's because they're the same thing. It's just,
right, let's just try it. Let's get dug in.
So which one? So they're both.
The get-go.
So Marmite looks like that for people if you don't know, and Vegemite looks exactly the same.
No, Vegemite's less glistening. What's this?
And Vegemite looks a lot more solid than the Marmite.
It is. This hasn't gone off. We just bought it. But that's a spoon with Vegemite, and it's not even falling off.
And that's
Marmite. So that's spreadable. This,
it's like frozen butter.
You could do that to build a house. Bricks and a bit of Vegemite. End of the day, it's yeast extract. The closest I've ever had to this before was when we used to do army cadets, and they used to give us those really cheap tubes of yeast extract, and they cost absolute tuppence. It tastes like that. It's dense.
Oh, that is dense. That is
Like, look, it's just on the end of my thumb. You use it if you've got any pieces of wood at home, like on the decking. And if you've got any decking at home or something, you need a little bit of like filler, then you could just rub this in and probably last like 80 years.
So Marmite has a much better feel, texture. They look similar, but again, Marmite wins on that. Branding's better.
Marmite's got a look. It's got that stretchiness. I know I can spread that over a piece of toast, or if I can truly British, you tiny bit of butter then over your on your crumpet.
So the Vegemite taste isn't as strong as the Marmite. The Marmite's a much stronger taste.
Yeah, it's really prominent.
Vegemite just tastes cheaper.
The Marmite, you don't need as much. You can spread a super thin layer, super easy. If you get butter on that toast or that crumpet before you put it on, that thing glides.
Whereas Vegemite's a bit of a thick boy.
Thick with 2 C's.
Need a nice thick layer for that.
I feel I get more bang for my buck out of this.
Get more bang. And
this isn't just us saying it. This is the fact I've grown up with Marmite, and Vegemite just sucks.
I haven't grown up with. Well, I did grow up with Marmite, but I never really ate it, and I still prefer it to Vegemite.
I bought 1.8 kilos of this in the first lockdown, so I'm slightly biased, but Vegemite just sucks.
Yeah, well, that was an easy win.
So I'm sorry if I've upset you if you live in Australia and you realise that Marmite's too expensive for you guys down there, but just Vegemite sucks. Sorry. Can't do us for slander, it's just the truth. Now to slowly segue to the serious stuff. So, average day of backpacking, how much is it in Australia?
40 to 50 pounds on average. It could be a little bit more, a little bit less, but I did just say average.
How much is a box of goon?
10 Aussie dollars.
So between 10 and 15 Aussie dollars, depending on the quality and the sheer size that you want to get. I know we bought a really, really cheap box of goon when we were up in Cairns. It was 4 litres plus an extra one for free. And it was $15, and that's seriously cheap. It's the cheapest booze you're going to be able to buy if you're backpacking around. It doesn't taste amazing. Top tip, there's a really, cannot remember the name of it right now. I'll stick it on the screen for any of our YouTube viewers. It's a really cheap lemon Fanta equivalent, and if you do about 2/3 goon and a tiny bit of that on top, it just makes it so much more drinkable. That was a tip we got when we were backpacking around. So, most important thing, how much is the beer?
The average price of a beer is also 10 Aussie dollars. So it's something we found in Australia when going around all the different off licenses. And this is why so many people do drink goon, even though it's not necessarily known for its quality, is that beer tended to be quite expensive.
That's the main thing. Anyone travelling around Australia or planning on travelling, you might have seen all these videos, the in-betweeners, all these different things pushing Australia. It is an amazing country, but the alcohol's crazy expensive. And goon, that's why it's become such a big thing in the backpackers, is it's just the cheapest booze out there.
Yeah.
And you're going to wake up with a bit of a headache, but at least you're not making a hole in your wallet.
What was one of your most disappointing things that happened whilst in Australia? I can see this is already, this is making you squirm a little bit in your seat.
We arrived in Sydney. We were super excited.
Quite happy, yeah.
We walked around, we ditched our stuff at Morgan's uncle's place. We thought, right, we've had a wander, let's go in a bar and just have a beer. Just to celebrate sitting down and have our first Aussie beer.
I mean, it's a very British thing to just go to the pub.
We sat down, I said, I'll have 2 of those. On tap, draft, beautiful.
Cold, lovely.
Puts the glass in front of me. I thought he'd made a mistake until I looked around the room. And apparently in Australia, you all drink your beers
out of children's glass. That wasn't even planned. How did that happen?
Planned. One bit, that just shows our anger. Australian people, government, I don't care.
Yeah, it must be a government issue. They've got to sort it out.
A schooner should not exist. If you tell me it should exist, and you say, oh no, we don't drink pints because they get too warm, that's because you're not drinking them quick enough. And they're just selling schooners because they know they're getting more money out of you. I paid for 2 schooners, and they're about the price of a pint each in London. Just sheer anger. Just don't do it. And that's why we're drinking Little Creatures Pale Ale from Western Australia. Seriously good beer. Stupidly expensive. But we're not going to do it the Aussie way. We're going to do it the British way. And that's why we're going to drink it out of this. A serious pint. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's good.
That is good. So Little Creature actually has a bit of its Aussie humour on the back. So it says here, whether you're taking refuge in a shady park or getting sandy by the sea, pale ale calls for good friends and even a better beer. We spend a little more time perfecting our pale. Every batch undergoes natural secondary conditioning in our best tanks.
Let's get back to business.
There are many ways that you can get to Australia. The main way is obviously fly, because it's a very large island, and they have many big international airports. So they've got Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Cairns, Perth, and then from Melbourne you can go to Uluru. So there are lots of options. As I just mentioned, flights are a very good way to get to the country and also get around the country. Greyhound bus is a very popular way and very cheap and common way to travel around, but for backpackers. So you can get a 30-day Wimmet pass for around 419 Aussie dollars, which I think is very good, because that means that you can go anywhere and get as many bus trips as you want in those 30 days all over Australia.
The way Morgan and I chose to travel Australia for the 3.5 weeks we were there was via a camper van. It was really good value for money, so it was roughly 2 weeks for 1,200 Aussie dollars, and there was a 250 Aussie dollar deposit. So please make sure when you're doing those deposits that you realise that that's part of the package, and you need to make sure you've got that money to one side. And also try and get your vehicle insurance online, as it'll be a lot cheaper than getting it through those guys.
Which is normally in the case that we actually had, where it was a 5,000 Aussie dollar refundable bond.
Yes.
Because remember, we had the issues with your card.
Yeah. One of the huge benefits of this is that your accommodation's wherever you want, and you don't have to stick to the structure of a Greyhound bus. You can go off route and go at your own speed the whole time, which is what we really wanted for our trip, because at certain times we really had to drive straight through the night, which we couldn't have really done with the Greyhound bus.
Yeah, and we also did a slightly weird route because we ran a 10k down the Sunshine Coast.
Don't know why.
I thought it was
a 10k run mid-holiday.
We trained a lot. We drove a few hours a day, so I felt that got us fitter. One of the best kept secrets that we have about driving around on a camper van is actually when you go to hostels, if you want to meet people, you can go to the hostel and actually ask to park there. And you can stay in your camper in the hostel, and this gives you security over your belongings and the camper, and it's a more social thing and means that maybe you can go out for a drink and have lots of fun while still staying in your camper. And these parking spots are a lot cheaper than actually paying for the hostel itself. Oh, and you get showers.
You do get showers.
That is definitely a big plus from that.
Seriously helps.
Yeah.
Whilst I sit back in this chair, sinking this beautiful Aussie pale ale.
Schooner.
No, it's not
It's a schooner at this point.
It's a real bit. Morgan is going to do some quick fire facts at me and at you guys viewing and listening.
Now, for this one, I actually want you to write in the comments your guess of how long you think it would take if you were to visit one new beach in Australia every single day. How long would it take you to visit them all? I'll drink whilst you think.
One beach a day.
One new beach every single day.
4 years.
27 years. They have one or two beaches in Australia, if you didn't know that.
So that's why if you turn up to a crowded beach in Australia, you can't complain because you chose that one. It's like 8,000, 9,000 beaches. Your fault. All I'm going to say, Morgan, is a Tim Tam and a pint do go quite well together.
Out of interest, do you know what day Australia Day is?
Not a clue.
So it's the 26th of January. And each year on the 26th of January, which is Australia Day, Brisbane hosts the World Championships of cockroach racing. And this happens every single year.
You vile Australians.
It's a weird sport. I'm not quite sure why you do it. And this again comes back to a lot of Aussie humour. An Australian man once tried to sell New Zealand on eBay. So I believe it got up to a few $1,000s before the CEO of eBay Australia had to come out and comment, clearly, New Zealand is not for sale. This is a fact that surprised me. The Australian Alps receive more snowfall than Switzerland.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not because they get a lot in a dense area. It's just because it's so big and so wide. But still, technically, they receive more snowfall than Switzerland. Australia is home to the world's longest fence. Originally built to keep the dingoes away from fertile land, the fence is now 5,614 kilometres long.
You didn't let me guess.
How long is it?
5,614 kilometres.
It's actually 5,614.3.
No, it's not. I cut a piece off. The more that this goes on, the nicer the Tim Tams are getting.
As you said, there are lots of camels. There are over 1 million wild camels that roam around the Australian deserts, and they're originally brought over to help with railroad construction.
One right back at you. Did you know that Australia export sand and camels to the Middle East?
Yes, I did.
Did you guys know? Listening or viewing that? Because if you didn't know, then I say you need to like, subscribe, leave a comment below, ring that notification bell, and give us a cheeky like on Instagram as well. If you're listening to us on a podcast and you're not driving at the moment, once you've finished driving, or if you're lying in bed listening to us, or you're doing anything, leave us a cheeky review and send us to all your friends saying, damn, he's smashing Tim Tams on set. Good beer, let's go. Now Morgan's finished with the quick fire facts, we're going to blitz through things that you guys might like to see in Australia. And we're talking locations, viewpoints, everything.
And we're going to blitz in a slow and depth way.
Sort of.
Kind of.
Maybe.
Ish.
Potentially.
Probably.
Let's go. What's the first thing you've got on our list, Morgan?
The first thing I have on the list right here is Sydney Opera House, which was a very amazing thing to see, but we actually didn't go in it, which I don't necessarily think, for me...
You have to.
You have to, but actually going to see it, I think you have to do.
100% have to see it. It's just one of the most iconic things. It's like going to London and missing out on the London Eye or Big Ben. It's just one of Sydney Harbour Bridge and Sydney Opera House are the equivalent of Big Ben and the London Eye in my head. They're just the sort of image of London. It's just the absolute image of London. With the Sydney Opera House, there's such an interesting story behind it because the original design was based on a competition. Supposedly, the person who ended up designing it was really good friends with head judge, and that's how he won it.
Smart.
And then the original budget that he put was well off what it actually ended up costing because all of the tiles on Sydney Opera House are self-cleaning. They only have to clean it properly at certain times of the year.
I honestly felt like we were having a conversation there. I was fully in it.
If you're in Australia and you're slightly out of the way, you might be thinking, do we want to go and see Uluru? Do we want to go to Ayers Rock? Morgan and I say you should. If you've got the time and you've got the budget for it, I really do recommend it. I was actually pushed off it, and Morgan really pushed me to go and see it.
This was something that I felt quite strongly about, and when I first brought it up, Will was like, why do I want to go in the middle of nowhere and fly all the way out to actually go and see it? And I said, for me, it was one of the things that when you're in Australia, you just have to see. And especially, well, right now it won't be right now when this comes out, they've had significant rain around Uluru, and there are these amazing waterfalls that are coming off it.
It's one of those things that you're not necessarily going to return to, but it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see something different. Uluru just has so much history behind it, it has so much meaning, especially to the Aboriginal people of Australia, that they are now limiting anyone and trying to oppose to anyone being allowed to hike it. And this was the first time, actually, we're going to segue into it, because I'm liking the word segue today, into Morgan's actual first helicopter trip. And we worked out that it was cheaper for us to get a helicopter ride up and over Uluru than it was for us to get a car transferred to the base of it, go around Uluru and then come back. And also the helicopter just took a small section of our time. We had to land, had a night there, had a bit of fun.
Yeah, it was a very memorable trip for us because
there was a power cut.
We had the power cut. My ex broke up with me.
So anyway, it was an amazing experience, and we do really highly recommend that you guys do it, and it's on your bucket list if you can fit in the time. If you don't think that you've got time, Morgan and I actually did Uluru in one day. We flew in the night before, we saw Uluru via helicopter, and we actually watched the sunset over it the previous night. And then we flew out that afternoon, flew from Uluru to Melbourne up to Cairns. Sounds ridiculous, worked perfectly. If you're a big fan of TV, you might know a bit of Bondi Beach because they are always rescuing people. I believe that Bondi Beach actually has one of the highest cases, continual cases of people getting paralysed due to
the amount of TV cameras there.
Due to the amount of people who go to Bondi thinking they really want to surf, they go out and then they get hit. Someone's going to correct me on that. That's just something I've been told. Do I believe everything I've been told?
Yes.
Sometimes. One of the biggest things about Bondi Beach is that it's super heavily populated place, similar to a few other bits in Oz. And as we were saying at the beginning, there are so many amazing beaches around Australia, so many that if you went to one every single day, you're going to be going for 27 years straight, that you don't just have to go to these touristy ones. There are amazing ones. Even places like Byron Bay, Whitsundays, they never get as rammed as the likes of Bondi Beach. And it's really sad to see how people aren't willing to travel that tiny bit further to go and see these other amazing beaches.
Another amazing thing that you can go and see is the horizontal falls in the Kimberley region. So the horizontal falls are a natural phenomena created by two narrow openings between two escarpments. The tides in this region are some of the biggest in the world, reaching up to 12 meters, and it's just a really impressive thing you can go and see. You can get boat trips where, if it's the right time, you can basically go over it, and you get these amazing views of this weird natural phenomena of horizontal falls.
And if you're one of our British viewers and your budget doesn't stretch out to a flight to Australia, or because of COVID restrictions you still cannot go, one of the other amazing places you can go to see the tide change is the Bristol Channel, which is the second largest tidal change in the world, of just over 15 metres.
So one of the things that I would have really liked to have done if we went to Western Australia is actually you can go and meet Prince Leonard at Hutt River Province. So basically, when the government tried to take some of his farmland off him, he found a loophole in the law that he discovered that back in the day, Western Australia had not been formed properly as part of Australia. Therefore, his land was not actually Australian, but part of Britain. So he pays no Australian taxes and does not follow any Australian law. So as you leave his country, one of the best things you can do is you can go to the post office and you can actually get your passport stamped. And of course, they have their own currency, which I just think this is such a unique experience and weird thing to see that if we went to Western Australia, I would have loved to have done this.
That sounds pretty. You sound like a pretty cool dude. I wonder if alcohol's cheaper.
Possibly, yeah. I wonder if they have different taxes.
Yeah, you just buy moonshine off it.
Yeah.
You'd make a killing.
You probably could kill. Oh no, because you've got to follow British law still. But then he doesn't pay British taxes. I think he's just fully independent.
If you've ever been on Instagram or TikTok and you guys have looked at Australian things and you've seen these amazing photos or drone shots of these pink lakes, all you need to do is go to Port Gregory and you can see these pink lakes, and that pink is created by this unbelievable bacteria which gets trapped in the salt granules, and then it creates this solid pink layer on the top. Great for the gram. No one's going to believe you've been, and it's not a super touristy destination because a lot of people don't see it as a cool thing, but it is such an unbelievable natural occurrence that, just like in some of the other things, we really do push people to go and try and do the different things out there and not just follow the crowd.
Do you know if you can swim in it?
You can swim in it. Is the right thing to do swim in it? Probably not. Which means Morgan will swim in it.
Now, this is very much a best kept secret that lots of locals don't even know, but we were shown by a local, so one of my friends, very near to Brisbane. You can go to Stratfor Island, otherwise known to the locals as Stratty. That again wasn't planned, but sounded fantastic.
So just off Stratty, you can actually witness at certain times of the year, like when we were there, you can witness humpback whales. You can see it all. It's such a beautiful, amazing island, and actually not that popular as a tourist destination, which just makes it that much more attractive to us. And it was something which we wouldn't have done unless we actually bumped into Morgan's mate. He let us stay with him, which made super cheap accommodation, and it was free. And Stratty's super cheap to get to. We had a barbecue in the parks, and that's actually a quick, cheeky side note, best kept secret for anyone. Almost every Australian public park has free barbecues to use. All you need to do is clean up after yourselves. Just don't be an idiot.
Yeah, and Stratty had a lot of those beaches that we were talking about, and according to my friend, the best ice cream in Australia. I mean, that is slightly debatable.
It is a continent.
But at the same time, it was pretty good.
It was pretty good. If you guys visit the Margaret River region, you can see over 150 wine producers.
Numerous breweries.
Incredible beaches.
Gourmet food. Which isn't Tim Tams.
You know what? Also coffee houses.
And chocolate makers, which are probably these glossy things.
Who doesn't like a little bit of cheddar at the cheese factories?
Caves to explore.
Can't wait. What about those forests to walk through?
And mountain bike trails.
Or maybe you've got some of those humpback whales to watch.
Well, you can do that with the surf culture.
Or if you like a little bit more like an artist, there is that to do.
And stunning landscapes.
Insane.
Insane.
Find all this in the Margaret River region.
One of the first things we did when arriving at Australia was climb Sydney Harbour Bridge.
We did indeed, and I do believe that it was one of my favourite things we did. Just in terms of, I'd lived in Sydney for 6 months when I was basically a baby, and
I didn't know that.
I'd heard so much of it when I was growing up. Just to be able to go back and then be on top of the bridge and just overlook the whole of. Well, you feel like you're overlooking the whole of Sydney. You've got the Opera House next to you, and then all of a sudden you're getting slapped on the side by 70 kilometres an hour wind.
Beautiful winds,
It's
yes.
It's completely surreal, and having all the cars passing underneath you is seriously cool.
And I quite like the heights, but you don't like heights. How did you find that experience?
It was fine. If you're just based out of Sydney, or you're trying to spend most of your time in Sydney for some reason, one of the other places that you can visit actually really close by is the Blue Mountain National Park. Really cheap to get a train ticket to get close by to it, or you could hire a camper van or a 4x4 and you can drive to it. Absolutely amazing. I know my cousin who's based out of Sydney, who's gone so many times, one of his favourite places in the whole of Oz.
Lots of hiking, lots of camping.
It's such an amazing national park. And I know Morgan and I would absolutely love to go back to Oz and really, well, not blitz through, but we'd really like to spend a lot of time through there.
One of the tours that we did, which is highly recommended because this is one of the most beautiful places in Australia, is actually, in my opinion, is actually sailing around Whitsunday.
I think it's top 10 things if you're driving down the East Coast. Probably top 5 things.
So I'd say 10 is quite a bit.
Top 5 to top 10 things to do is the Whitsundays. It's unlike anywhere I've ever been before in my life. When you're literally told you can stick your toothbrush in the sand and brush your teeth because there are high levels of silicone in it, it's ridiculous. If you are, just as a warning, as pale as Morgan or worse, then please don't take factor 50. Just, you need higher than that. That sand will burn you in a matter of minutes in any intensity. It's just the reflection of the sand, and this isn't actually a joke now, the reflection of the sand is very intense, and most people end up burnt on there just because you don't realise until you get back to the boat. But the Whitsundays are one of the most pristine. You just can't even describe it. You need to go.
But one of our tips for it is make sure you try and find a tour group or a boat trip. So we did a 3-day, 2-night sailing trip. Make sure you find one that's roughly the same age group as you, ish.
Yeah, we had some old people on.
We had, yes, a few old people. And something that actually surprised me about the Whitsunday itself was actually about how windy it was. I was actually slightly cold.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
it was
we did stay
super
over.
windy. Yeah, that is true. That is true, but it was almost cold for me. It was that windy.
He's lying.
I'm not lying. It was cold. There was one bit that round the corner that was like a cove that was like nice and warm. The rest of it was cold.
Well. Uncle Brian's Waterfall tour.
I would probably say that this was our highest recommended thing before going to Australia.
One of the highest recommended things, both from my brother and from my cousin, who I know my cousin's done it multiple times. It is family-run business to its core, with the one thing being key is that you have fun the whole trip. They target the whole trip at anyone, I think, under 30 or under 35 because they really want to push the younger generation, and they make the whole trip. From the second that you get in that sort of minibus, you're playing games the whole way along, you're singing songs. On the way back, you're drawing on the windows, you're eating mints and passing them in weird ways. It was so much fun.
You kissed an old man playing the mint game.
He wasn't meant to be on our bus, but it was pretty funny. I didn't kiss him.
We've got a picture here.
Got a little bit close. No, it was very weird. Anyway, Uncle Brian's tour, absolutely amazing. You go and see waterfalls and you get told facts which you would never hear otherwise. But please, if you guys do go out and they really push it, please bump up their reviews online, because they're being competed now by massive tourist officers who sadly ruin the family kind of guys like they are.
Yeah, kick them out.
And this is a little plug for an amazing agency out there who
we're not sponsored by.
We're not sponsored by at all. They just made our trip what it was. They are called Happy Travels. It's a small smallish, it's grown very quickly. Family-run travel agents, and they are just so good. And if you go around the country and you come across another one, they've given you a wristband and you can show it to them, and they can give you any vouchers or anything for the local area. So we got tickets into loads of different bars and everything, free food at certain hostels. It was just so good.
Well, they did free bar crawls, and we actually won, or I actually won. It was half price. It was half price kayaking with dolphins at Byron Bay, and a free surfing lesson by winning a limbo competition, which I regretted the next day because my back hurt a lot. But I won.
Another amazing thing about those guys is if you are travelling out there and you're trying to look for a job and you've ended up doing a fair bit of Oz, but you want to stay out for a long period of time, they're a great place to start and try and get a job, because I know they're trying to constantly hire us because we've gone around and done loads of the excursions, especially through them. And they will try and find you guys as well if you've done the right activities or if you're just an outgoing person.
And they're also based in New Zealand as well.
That's where we met them. We met them in Queenstown just prior to our trip to Australia, and then we booked loads of our stuff through them just before we left.
Now, if you go very far up north, near Darwin, one of the more interesting things to go see is a World Heritage listed Daintree Rainforest, which is the world's oldest rainforest in Cape Tribulation, and it's really great for hiking, and it's all round. If you ever get anywhere near, it's very worth going to see.
100% have to go and see it. It's just, the thing is, Australia's so big, and we're telling you guys to go and see everything, but at the end of the day, you guys are going to pick. But we're just trying to throw as much out there so it really gets you guys thinking about it. But these are just a list of the big things out there, and you're going to make it your own. You're going to make it your own experience, unlike anyone else has ever had. And these are just, it's one of the things you need to see. It's like going and seeing Uluru. You're not necessarily going to see it, but we want to put that option in front of you so that you really know it. And this rainforest is unlike anywhere else in the world, just like Uluru is unlike anywhere else in the world. Yeah, you could go rafting in other places, but you can't see these specific natural wonders of the world anywhere else.
Which is why you should subscribe, because we're trying to find all these unique locations and give you information and teach you about them. At the end of the day, you should do your own research, but what we think and what we're trying to give you is essentially your research here on a platter.
And that leads me on to the next point, because if you guys have a country in mind that you really, really want to know more information about, and you're struggling to find those little snippets, all those really interesting things to do while you're there, please do privately message us on our Instagram. Do leave a comment below. Just contact us any way you can, because we will genuinely take that into account and make sure that you know about it when we do it.
Another very popular backpacking experience is to go to Noosa Beach, where you can swim, surf and see koalas, and this is very popular among backpackers, so you'll meet lots of people there, and it's a really exciting thing to do.
As I'm so genuinely passionate about the wildlife out there and making sure that it's looked after in the correct way, I have to commend Australia and the quality of the zoos that we saw. Morgan wouldn't necessarily have gone to them, he might have done, but I'm really on going to these zoos.
I would have definitely gone to Australia Zoo.
So the first one we went to was Taronga Zoo in Sydney. One of the reasons I really wanted to go there was I have some of my really early photos when I was a tiny kid and lived out there where my mum took of me in Taronga Zoo, and she just she spent the past 20 something years explaining it to me, so it was a bucket list for me to do. Absolutely amazing work that they do there as well. And then also you've got Australia Zoo, which is where the famous crocodile hunter had his zoo. It's just the work they put in for any reptile is, you can't even describe it. The passion that's gone into that place, it is genuine. You can see it. The space that they create for all of the animals.
That was the biggest thing that I found when going there, was that the space that all the animals had. It was unbelievable. It was so big and so large. And one of my favourite things, crocodiles were amazing, but I quite enjoyed the almost interactive cages, so with the massive ones that you could walk through.
Yeah.
And then you could feed the kangaroos, or you walk through the bird cages, and you have birds flying around you. And I found that such an interesting experience that you don't really get here in the UK.
Not in the same way, and I feel like, having spent a lot of time around wildlife, when I go to certain zoos, so I don't want to put any certain zoos down, but when I've been to zoos in certain cities around the world, I can see the very negative impact that being in that constant loud environment has on them in the small enclosures. But the enclosures that zoos such as Australia Zoo put their animals in, I do personally truly believe that they have the animals at the top of their list, and it's not just about money or anything else. They do genuinely seem to care and want to make that bigger difference, and the education that they're putting out there as well, and especially when the Australia fires happened, the work all of these zoos, rescue centres put in across the country was just impeccable. Whilst you're in Australia, these are some of the top experiences that we've either experienced or we know other people have experienced, and they're just everything from the first one we've got is 1770 Middle Island Castaway Experience, poo with a view. So most people won't really know what it is. It's the time Morgan and I drove an old army lark vehicle.
Used in the Vietnam War for transporting troops.
Yes. And it was just insane. We drove this.
Yeah, we actually got to drive it. So
actually drove it. So we've got photos which we'll be showing whilst we're talking.
He drove it on the road, then into the sea, and then along the beach. And when we were on the beaches, then we were allowed to drive a little bit.
And then this Castaway Island, unlike anywhere else we've been before, you feel like you're fending for yourself. It's a bit like COVID, really. You don't see anyone for days.
Yeah, so the experience is a castaway experience. So they leave you on the island. You can see boats pass every once in a while, but you're there alone, and you have this bloke, I can't actually remember his name, but there's this guy who's there who's trying to sort of look after you.
And there's so many activities you can do from... He takes you out on a mini sort of motorboat, and then you go dune boarding into the water, which I've never done before.
And which we have some funny photos.
We were fishing, we were kayaking, we kayaked across the river and then started hitting wild oysters off a rock.
Yeah.
There's just, it's
loads
insane.
Of kangaroos. There was the lighthouse we walked up to.
We sat around this campfire, and then this possum turned up, and he said, "Oh, it's my friend." So,
which is a wild possum.
It was completely wild possum. Then it just came and sat on the corner, and he'd give it a couple of bits of fruit, and it was insane.
It was crazy, and one of the craziest experiences, and I still to this day I assume it was true, but one of the first things he told us when we arrived was that if you see this snail, do not touch it because it will paralyse you.
Well, I don't know if he was just trying to scare us.
I know he probably was, and we later found out when we were actually, because when we went fishing, we actually went and got our own bait.
Yeah,
which was really cool. So we had these pumps, and there were all these like wormhole things.
Pumps will look a bit like this, and then what you do is you press down the pump onto the small. So these are a type of crustacean. They're a small kind of shrimp. And then you pull up the pump, which compresses small vacuum internally, so it sucks up all the mud, and then you shoot it to one side, and then you hand pick out the small little creatures. Then we hit them on and caught a few fish.
Yeah, but what he told us was that this snail, if you touch it, can paralyse you if it shoots its venom at you, which in Australia it's believable. Yeah, we have no idea. But when we were fishing for these bait, we looked. And it was barely 20 yards out from the shore. There were hundreds of them, all over the seabed. It was crazy, and that was slightly disconcerting because we'd walked across from a different place when the tide was out because we went to the other side of the island. And just to think that we could have so comfortably walked across that. It was slightly worrying.
I'd say top 3 things in my book that we did in Oz, and probably I'd say top 3 things to do in Oz.
Top 3, top 10.
I think this is one of my favourite memories of Oz was Fraser Island, where if I said to you, have you ever driven a car on a beach? Have you been on a car on a beach with a group of people you never met before, but you feel like you're best friends and you know each other for
Queen.
Years? Singing absolutely everything from Disney songs to Queen to whatever you guys should choose to put on. Your answer is probably no. And this is why you need to go. It is just insane experience being able to drive some of these large jeeps along a sandy beach for miles on end, seeing dingoes, singing songs, seeing some of the locals fishing into the sea, going to the likes of Lake Mackenzie, which is this stunning, beautiful, massive lake.
I swam across Lake Mackenzie.
Don't know why.
Took a while. Didn't expect it to take that long, and everyone almost left. So we came back, and then everyone had gone. And I'm also not sure people were that excited about. This doesn't make me look good, but that excited about my driving. Partly because people were hungover. I just thought it was the best driving because I learned the times you meant to accelerate to get the most height over the sort of duney bits, and I managed to be driving at the time when the road was the worst. So I had the best time.
Funnily enough, the beach is called 95 Mile Beach.
Why is that?
I don't know, Morgan. I wonder why. Maybe because it's 96 kilometres. No, it's 95 mile long beach, and then if you go to the sort of middle/end of 95 Mile Beach in the car, one of the things that you will see is the champagne pool, which is like a sort of foamy water rolling into some tiny little pools that you can swim in.
And it's quite picturesque, and you can get some pretty pictures.
It's a good little bit of fun. And one of the other things that you're likely to see off Fraser Island if you're there at the correct time of the year is humpback whales. Really good chance because there's that viewpoint which you walk up to, and then you look out all over the sea, and if you don't see a humpback whale, you're just there at the wrong time of the year. One of the things Morgan mentioned earlier was when he won a limbo competition and we got 2 for 1 for kayaking with dolphins. Turned out that kayaking for dolphins in Byron Bay was one of our best experiences. It turned out that we were kayaking with a few dolphins, but it turned out we were kayaking with a lot of humpback whales which were going directly under us. So it felt like free because it was 2 for 1, but just absolutely surreal experience going to Byron Bay, one of the most beautiful beaches in Australia that we visited. And
very hippie vibes.
Yeah, very hippie, as you'd experience. As you might imagine from the In-Betweeners film, there's that sort of hippie vibe to it, but it's just a stunning beach, lovely locals there. Just literally went out on a kayak, not even that far, and then all of a sudden we're seeing dolphins, and these humpback whales are coming straight under our kayaks.
Oh, it's truly amazing.
So cool.
Australia is also home to the largest reef in the world, and that is obviously called the Great Barrier Reef. Dun, dun, dun. One of the best places you can go and see this from is Cairns, and this is just something, and as Will often talks, well, he often talks full stop, but when he talks about wildlife, Great Barrier Reef, global warming is killing the reef, so it's one of those things that you should try and see sooner rather than later, because in 20 years there may not be much of it left. Lots of it isn't that deep, so snorkeling is enough, but you can scuba dive as well for it.
One of the other things whilst road tripping Australia is you might fancy going to Magnetic Island, known as a bit of a party island if you want to go and see the equivalent of the Aussie full moon party. There's a lot to be done around there. You can snorkel, swim, lovely beaches.
And some of our friends definitely enjoyed some extracurricular activities there.
You know who you are. Carrying on the same topic, if you're seriously into your snorkeling and you want to potentially go and see some whale sharks, Morgan, where are you going to go?
Ningaloo Reef. So Ningaloo Reef is one of the best places in Australia where you can go whale shark snorkeling. In Mount Buffalo in New South Wales, you can do this really cool activity, which is cliff camping. I mean, for me it's cool, for you it's probably your worst nightmare.
I don't know, I'd try it.
You may try it, but you probably wouldn't be as excited as I would be, and you probably wouldn't sleep as much. I'd probably just be there and be very chill and fall asleep straight away. You'd probably be wide awake. But it's so cool because you don't get the opportunity as a tourist to do this in many places, and New South Wales is one of the coolest places that you can do it.
As much as Morgan might take the mickey out of me and my fear of heights, one of the things I did do and I absolutely loved and would do with a heartbeat again is actually skydive. We skydived over Airlie Beach. This is my vest that I got from Airlie Beach, and it's just, if you're scared of heights and you want a tiny bit of an adrenaline rush, or you just want to do something, or you just want to do a skydive with the most insane view, go and skydive Airlie Beach. It's just something you've got to do.
And as we said, Whitsunday beaches are so beautiful, and Airlie Beach is where you start to go to Whitsundays and the sailing trip. You can skydive over Whitsunday, which are some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. And to actually see this aerial view is a truly unbelievable experience.
Australia is known for some of the nicest wine in the world. You might know them for Shiraz, for example, or if you're in the UK, you might recognise a bottle of Jacob's Creek. If you're in anywhere like Australia, don't go for these big brands. Go and try some of the local brands which you've never seen before. So if you're based out of Sydney, for example, you could go to Hunter's Valley, and you can just try the most immaculate wine. And you go out, try them when you're on a road trip. In a lot of Australia, you will be able to find a vineyard to go and help out just by drinking. If you just think, I'm having a glass of wine and I'm supporting a local business, that's a feel-good factor if I've ever heard one. And just do it.
But don't drink and drive if you're camper vanning.
Yes, don't drink and drive. Do not support that in any way. What we used to do when we're camper vanning, we'd try not to drink until right at the end of the day, and our camper was parked up where we knew it was going to stay that night.
And then we could get Ubers if we were going to a vineyard, or taxis. Or we did have scenarios in New Zealand where I was driving, for example, because...
I could drink.
Yeah.
Or you might go on a vineyard tour where
they drive for you.
Exactly, that's the best thing. If you're over in Western Australia, one of the things that you can do is go and visit Rottnest Island, a nature reserve with no cars, 18 kilometres off the coast of Perth. And this is actually one of the other places that, other than mainland Perth and Bald Island, which is just off Perth as well, it's another place that you can go and see a quokka.
What's a quokka?
Exactly. If you don't know what a quokka is, it is that little smiley animal. You've probably seen it somewhere online before, thinking, oh, it's so cute. On a tiny video on Facebook, on somewhere else. I'm just going to lob up a load of photos right now. But if you are watching this right now on YouTube and you tell me they're not cute, you need to seek help however you can. It's a happy little thick boy. And I mean thick with 2 C's.
And we're very much we've spoken about quite a few activities here, but we're barely touching the tip of the iceberg. There are so many other things to do, but we're just trying to inspire you. Like, you could explore wildlife at Kangaroo Island, do a hot air balloon in Byron Bay, watch the penguin parade at Phillip Island. There are so many other things that we barely scratched the surface, but we just want to be here to help you have a better understanding of all the different things you can see and do at Australia, and we want to inspire you to want to travel to Australia. A quick summary about the best kept secrets in and around Australia is Goon.
Try and camper van around Australia if you can, because you're just going to get that extra bit of memory.
And definitely for us is the Castaway Tour in Middle Island, which is near 1770.
We're saying this because we do believe that it's one of those activities which you won't just naturally come across when you look at other guidebooks. It might pop up every now and then, but we do think it's one of those special things that we're really sort of almost secretly told to do just because we know a couple of people who have done it before.
And it's a truly unique experience that you won't get to do many other times unless you live there.
So Morgan and I are going to quickly blitz through the sort of structure or how we look at a 3-day, a 7-day or a 2-week itinerary for Australia. 3-day itinerary to Australia wouldn't realistically work for anyone who's having to do a solid flight there if you live closer by, or if you're going from sort of Western Australia to Eastern Australia, then you've got a bit of potential. So sort of a 3-day itinerary, we'd probably recommend either just spending, let's say you come from Perth, you might just spend your time in Sydney, for example.
Yeah, I would basically say it's a city. You spend 3 days in a big city. I mean, maybe to the Blue Mountains for a few days hiking. So if it was Sydney, we'd do Sydney Opera House, Harbour Bridge, the Rocks, which is the markets, Taronga Zoo, and maybe Bondi or Manly Beach if we have the time.
Now Morgan, if you had 7 days, firstly, would you bother going for a 7-day holiday in Australia if you're coming from Europe? And if you did go for a week from wherever, what would you do?
So from Europe it would be very close because you'd essentially be getting 5 days actual time in Australia I would probably essentially say you can get 2 cities there. That's not what I tend to like doing. If I had a week, what I'd maybe do is Sydney plus Uluru and go and see Ayers Rock or Blue Mountains. So it's sort of Sydney plus a decent activity. So or a big city. So Melbourne, Perth, Cairns, Adelaide, Brisbane,
Canberra.
Nothing in Canberra. A big city plus an activity. So you could do Brisbane and then maybe spend a few days in Byron Bay. You could do Sydney and Blue Mountain, or Melbourne and Uluru. So they're sort of what I do for 7 days. If you were given 2 weeks, what would you do?
2 weeks in Australia, I think then you're actually talking quite a good trip. I think in 2 weeks, if I was flying from Europe, I'll probably fly to Sydney, spend I'd say 2.5 days in Sydney. I'd then fly up to Cairns in the afternoon, and then I'd spend the remainder of that 2 weeks going from Cairns to Brisbane, doing all the things along there, and then from Brisbane I'll fly back home.
Yeah, so
that's where I'd do it, because I know between Cairns to Brisbane there are enough activities to fill that time and to actually spend enough time at each station. Yeah,
so we actually, from Cairns, spent 2 weeks going from Cairns to Sydney. So if you'd already been to Sydney, already been to Melbourne or Perth, or weren't as interested, you could physically, and we did do this, spend 2 weeks going from Cairns to Sydney and doing all the activities down there.
Just to round up our episode, what would you say your number one experience was that we did in Australia?
So for my number one, I'm going to say Fraser Island, but not because of the actual island itself. It was the experience that I had there and the people that I met there that made it so good. We'd had 3 different island experiences that I found very exciting. So we had Fraser, which was amazing because of the people and all the different, basically, experience we had there.
Yeah.
We had Stratfor, which was like the non-touristy, very local, really cool, authentic Aussie experience. And then we had Middle Island, which was our castaway experience.
Yeah.
But my number one, as I said, would be Fraser.
Yeah, I think Fraser's really got to be out there for me. I think if I wasn't looking at activity, we just had so much fun. I think
we had so much fun, full stop.
Yeah, it is hard to, I mean, that's why I asked the question. I think it is just so hard to pinpoint a favourite moment, because it's just everything combined made that trip what it was. It was the late nights that you're driving and then you're having a really cheap beer or sack of goon in a camper van, to the really funny different adventures that you go on, and it's just the people you meet along the way really make it. And the
near-death experiences driving, and actually on our last night near Sydney, nearly hitting a kangaroo that jumped across the road in the middle of this really dodgy, dark, black, scary road.
That's true.
Honestly, afterwards, we sat there for about a minute in the middle of the road, because I was sort of just like, that was so close. This was our last day.
That is actually a good place to get in our final snippet of information as a best kept secret. If you are camp vanning or you are just driving around Australia, you should not, or if you do, you should be highly aware and alert of driving at dawn and dusk due to the kangaroos. If you drive along at those times and you've got your lights on your car, you will see the reflection of these eyes. Hey sir, these kangaroos feel like they're slightly suicidal and wanting to jump in front of your car. It's terrifying. We saw it had loads of other people. For some reason it only decided to happen on our last night of driving.
So, Will, are there any creators that you follow that have inspired you for any sort of Australian experiences or things to go see in Australia?
No.
No, not at all?
No.
Okay, well, for me, it's a guy called Nomadic Matt. And I've actually got his book here, which is not sponsored, but I genuinely really enjoy this book, which is Travel Around the World for $50 a day. And he also does travel guides for Australia, and this has a large section in about Australia, and I just think the information in it's very good.
We're going to stick a link in the description below for this book. I wouldn't say I've got a creator of someone who's really inspired me for my travelling around Australia. I'd actually say it's my cousin. He decided to quit his job in the UK and go and travel around Australia, and then he actually decided staying out there with his now fiance.
Ooh.
And so much of my experience of going around there, a lot of the things that we ended up doing a lot of it was based on his recommendation. The likes of 1770, we wouldn't have known about that. Uncle Brian's tour, he told us straight away. And he really did honestly affect our trip in such an amazing and positive way.
Very much so.
So, to finish up officially, what we'd like to say to you guys is thank you very much for listening and watching this episode, whatever platform you're on. If you do leave a review, a like, a comment, a subscription, ring that notification bell, then it helps us massively. What Morgan and I are going to do now is refill these beers and have a bit of fun. Thanks for watching. Cheers, Morgan.
Cheers. Roll the outro.
Yeah, let's make it happen. I hope that you can handle going on adventures, best kept secret travels. Yeah, all over the globe, having fun, you know the deal. Amazing secret locations, hang out with Morgan and Will. Educate and entertain, haggle in the market, sharing their experiences. Time to get it started. Let's go.